Isaac Sarason is a skilled hacker, formerly employed by British Telecom-Sprint. When his health failed, Isaac did the only thing he could think of. He ran. A burqa-wearing doctor known as Fatima took pity on Isaac and helped him make his way to the mysterious Star X line. At the end of all hope, they found the Star X line and the slim promise that the enigmatic beings behind the Star X could save Isaac from the implants which destroyed his life. What do you do when those who saved you have recorded everything you are? What do you do when your every action is tracked by the Keylogger? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Keylogger, the third installment of Firmware by Colbytrax. Episode 54. Sam turned from the pillbox-hatted man performing the motions of muff diving and looked me hard in the face. I think you are trying to shield yourself from the real question, which is, what were you doing before you found yourself in this little branch of Gomorrah? I looked away and found there was nowhere I could look without seeing a man doing something obscene to himself, and returned my gaze to Sam's soft face. I was looking for a job. Sam shook his head, as if he was trying to clear his ears. A job? You were looking for a job? What for? I need to pay for things, I said. How could a Samuel understand the concept of honor when all they did was hide from Koenig and his servants? It's time to grow up, take responsibility for my actions. Who told you this rubbish? Sam asked. Fatima, I answered. She's letting me live at her place while I get on my feet. Sam shook his head. What you living in, the old game box? Something like that, I answered as I started to walk down the alley looking for a place I could apply at. Well, that is your problem then, Sam said as he caught up with me. What problem? I asked. Why were there no places for me to apply at? Where were all the IT companies and telemarketers and accounting shops? And for that matter, where were all the doctors and little shops selling things for your apartment? And, now that I thought about it, where was everybody else? Why was I on a street covered in adverts for men who wanted to perform personalized service just for you? The problem of us being stuck on a street full of prostitution outlets, Sam answered. I mean, you are on the alley. You know, the street advertised as a physical search engine capable of finding exactly what you need in less than 10 minutes of walking. Well, we have been walking for a bit longer than 10 minutes, so I think the alley is trying to tell you something. And that would be, I felt I knew the answer, but I didn't want to admit it to myself. That would be the fact that the only avenue of employment you have left in this gleaming bastion of finery and religious freedom is the oldest profession. Sam answered, as matter-of-factly as a man could without seeming bored. I think the only work you are qualified for is in the personal service sector. Bah, I started to say. I was talented. I had skills. Why couldn't anyone see that? Then I saw that none of that mattered. I was an illegal alien in a world of documentation and licensing and soul-crushing 8-hour-a-day work where the smartest person in the room by a mile was you, and you could do nothing but smile and keep your mouth shut. Maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't capable of doing a job a real person could do in their sleep. I'm not a whore. Sam seemed unfazed by the tragedy which was happening to me. He spoke as if he were relating the news of an atrocity happening in some strange place on the other side of the world. It was interesting, but it didn't affect him, so he didn't really care. Not really. Cheer up, he said. It's not like it's really you performing the work. You're just driving an avatar, and you can disconnect those parts of the system you don't need to perform your work. I was losing it. There was no way I was turning to prostitution. Besides, what would Fatima say? Sure, she wanted me to get legal employment, and prostitution was legal. But there had to be a line somewhere I was crossing which Fatima wouldn't approve of. That was just too far from the proper path of middle-class aspirant. There had to be something else I could do which would be legal and allow me to pay my way. There had to be. There just had to be. I snapped on Sam. I'm glad you came by, but I'm sure you didn't come here to discuss my lack of honorable work prospects. Well, I didn't, Sam answered, though I think you might need to dump a bit of the old St. O'Hay's sexual baggage and just relax and enjoy it as much as you can. I slapped him. By God, I slapped the uncaring bastard. Relax and enjoy it? I screamed. Relax and enjoy it? Is that what Leo said to Nona when he sent her to drug and rape me? That she was just supposed to relax and enjoy it because it was just a job and I broke down. This was all too much for me. I lost my balance. I almost fell to the ground, but I was able to recover before. I didn't know where to go from there. Sam felt his cheek. I noticed that the servers which formed the backbone of V-City had been programmed to show the physical side of abuse. His cheek showed a bright red. Within a handful of seconds, it faded back to our normal skin tone. For a second, I wondered if the system supported bruising, and then stopped myself as a wave of confusion moved through my ersatz head. I wrapped my arms around my skull, bending myself over in mockery of every comedic head injury ever filmed. What the hell is wrong with me? How can I go from anger to wondering about the methods the sysops use to simulate physical attacks on avatars? There is no rhyme or reason to any of this, I cried as my interior monologue became my exterior monologue. My knees gave way beneath me and I found myself on the ground. Sam ran his hand along his cheek and stepped back. I'm sorry, I only came to find you to test the data I had. He paused for a moment before resuming. Someone gave me access to the metadata of the city. Not some of it, not a sampling, but all of it. I found you because no one had seen an Ishmael since BGM, and I thought if I could find you through the metadata, then I could find Isaac. I wiped my eyes and lifted my head to look up into Sam Noir's face. You're here because of a data set? Is that right? I found myself standing up and advancing on Sam. You arrogant little bastard. I was just starting to get things under control, and I was at a loss for words. Sam gave me a wry smile and spoke in that arrogant, I'm so above all this tone Fatima had told me about. The voice of Isaac when he had everything set up for a big cock-up. It's not like you're actually getting anywhere. I mean, look at you. The only job this V-City place thinks you can do is on your knees. You're living on an old video game box with a tranny doctor. He never finished that statement. He never had a chance to finish his statement. My fist flew and flew and flew again and again. My fist slammed into the meat of his body and knew that no expense had been spared simulating every facet of human interaction. Everything was perfect. The moment of exquisite pain as knuckle struck flesh was perfect. The shock of impact carried up into the wrist and forearm and elbow and the humerus and finally into the shoulder. It went into all the places a strike should come from, terminating with a rough tightness in the back. It was exactly how it should feel, and I hope Sam received his proper dose of realistic combat. From the cries and whines and groans and moans, I think the simulation was doing exactly what it was meant to do. I beat and pummeled him until the server's harassment filters cut in and separated us. One moment I was on him, my knee in his crotch, one hand holding his head down, the other pulling back for the latest in a countably infinite number of blows I was prepared to administer. His face was already a bloody pulp from the amount of petechial hemorrhaging on his exposed flesh. A part of my mind is rewarded with the knowledge that bruises were part of the experience of V-City. Then I was falling. I fell for a moment. There was barely enough time to register I was falling. My knees met the concrete with nearly my entire body weight on them. I cried out and fell onto my hands. My hands, while spared the brunt of my fall, created the most extreme sensations. I felt something I hadn't experienced for years, the scraping, tearing sensation of skin ripping on rough cement. Torn between the pain in my knees and that of my hands, I chose to cradle my hands to my chest as I rolled onto my side. I closed my eyes and let out all the pain and anxiety I had been feeling ever since I began my quest to find an honest life. It just wasn't fair. Why hadn't anyone told me how hard things were? Why didn't I know how to live in a world which didn't want me? Why didn't the world want me? The world doesn't need us. The voice of a new daemon came to me. How did I know it was a daemon? The same way I always did of late. It carried a bit of Isaac in it. In this case, it carried his voice and his attitudes. And after a while, you just know. And by us, I don't mean just the children of Isaac, or the seed of Adam, or the spawn of slimy pools at the dawn of all things. Once you realize that the worlds of rocks and stone and silent plains are the happy worlds, life becomes more bearable. And there was the know-it-all attitude. How had Fatima put up with me all those long days hidden behind the tanks at the Amazov catfish farm? His voice pulled me from my inward hatred. I now had a concrete someone to hate. Without opening my eyes, I said, "So, I get a visit from good old Sam, and now I get his fan club. Will I be seeing the rest of the Samuel line here soon? Should I maybe freshen up? Put out a cup of tea and a plate of scones? All right. I can't. I'm freaking broke, so don't mind the mess. Come on down. The gutter is clean. Not like it's ever used for anything anyways." "Oh, but it is," the annoying one said. "The weather is set to imitate the halcyon days. Warm, wet summers and rainy winters with a hint of snow around the holidays. The type of thing our grandparents took for granted before industry started stripping the carbon from the atmosphere. Though you knew all about that, as I learned at the same place you did. So, yes, the gutters are used. A lot of resources are devoted to making sure the water flows the way it's supposed to. Wouldn't want any uncanny valley situations, especially with water." I was starting to get tired of the smugness. There was only one branch of my family who'd be so secure in their position as to waste my time in this manner. This bastard was a Simeon. "There won't be any more Samuels coming to visit, will there?" I asked. I heard the crunch of concrete under the daemon's boots as he circled around me. I listened to the subtlety of the simulated interaction of particles and realized that the creators of this place had been more than programmers. They had been artists. Finally he spoke. "There will be no more Samuel visitations, unless, of course, you invite them in. I can't have this place filling up with riffraff, can I?" "You're a Simeon," I said as I opened my eyes and sat up. The Simeon stood above me, just out of arm's reach, dressed in a long-tailed red paisley velvet coat with severe-cut slacks, snakeskin boots, and wide-brimmed pillbox hat. Damn. Sam had been right. Pillbox hats were back in fashion. "What you calling yourself? Simeon V-City? That is your naming protocol." I heard his boots do a little shuffle, and I watched him stretch to his full height and hold his arms out wide to the sky. It was only now, as he stood tall like a ringmaster in a circus, that I noticed his scarlet gloves and lion-headed walking stick. With a dramatic air, he announced his name to an audience of one. "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair." "Ozymandias?" I asked. I shook my head and stood up slowly. I found that, unlike Sam, this version of Isaac had adjusted his stature to his perceived position. A play, I am sure, on the idea that great men were great because everything about them was great. From their great fashion, to their great stature, to their great skills in the bedroom and boardroom, all these things spoke to the heart of man. You can call me Oz the Great and Powerful if you wish, or Ozzy, or just Oz, if all that is too hard for you to handle. I'm not particular about what you call me, as long as you remember who lets you live here. Oz said. He started with a smile and ended with a stern look. Yes, Dad, I answered. I'll try not to mess up the place. None of that lip from you, son, Oz said in the exaggerated manner of one who believes all of life is a stage. I see you're a bit down on your luck. He waved his arms to embrace the world of jiggle joints and flesh dealers all around us. Perhaps I could find a place for you in my organization. We could use a fellow like you. Someone who knows their way around the net, so to speak, if you know what I mean. What an ass. That is what I knew. But I didn't share that bit of knowledge with old Oz. I stood slowly and rubbed my raw palms against my even rawer knees. So, what you need me to do isn't legal, is it? I asked. There was no reason for Oz to offer me anything he could do himself. Thus, whatever this bloated sack of self-importance wanted had to be strictly off books, and not at all nice. What is it with you and this paradigm of legal versus illegal? It's like you've suddenly become a Manichaean. Everything is a side against a side for you. You've replaced the devil with the criminal and the angels with the bourgeoisie. Oz loved to hear his own voice, to pontificate on the world. This I knew from the way words fell from his lips. If I didn't shut him up, he'd keep talking until the heat death of the universe. You didn't come here to offer me a job I wouldn't take, or to comment on my moral choices, I said as I watched the wounds on my hands heal. It was like watching a time-lapse movie of an injury mending. It was both creepy and fascinating at the same time. It was through little details like this that the wonder of the Creator was known. The Creator of this world was really into details.
Firmware Keylogger begins where Firmware Proxy ends, which in turn followed on the heels of Firmware Hijacked. Firmware Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are all available in ebook versions from our store at shop.Colbyjack.net, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Smashwords.com. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. A complete audiobook version of both Firmware, Hijacked, Proxy, and soon Keylogger is available for download through our shop as well. If you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located on the right-hand side of the blog roll. Firmware Keylogger is released under a Creative Commons, non-commercial, attribution, share-alike license. Do what you want with it. Just don't sell it, and always tell people where it came from. If you received this from a friend and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcast, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of two minds about the whole thing anyway. I do mostly Twitter, so if you do the tweets and want to follow me, I'm Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. Thank you once again. Remember to be fabulous and have a wonderful week.